Yep, I'm muted. Well, that's okay. So anyway, as I was saying, we have a new feature now that we have on the dev side. On the dev side now, so we have this CSV template. I'll bring this thing back up on top of the stream. So it's just name and value. And then we have the team abbreviations and the stack percentages. So we'll have this for NFL and MLB. Basically, then once we have that, we can bring it back into here, into our stack settings, and they'll be imported. So this, like I was saying when I was muted, this will be live next week when we push all this stuff up to production. But anyway, we can run this now. So let's just run a sim in the moonshot, 12,000 entries. Should give us a good idea of what large field contests are going to look like today. Looks good. Generating. Everything looks good. We could take a look here while that's running. We can just see Boston, Dodgers, Houston, and Baltimore. So not really surprising here who I think my top stacks are going to be, just in terms of probabilities. But I mean, this is such a huge slate. There's a lot of teams that could be top stack. I mean, Oakland and the White Sox, unsurprisingly, are the two least likely teams to be top stacks, and they still have like a 2% chance compared to a 6% chance on the high end. So diversification is probably the key today, unless you want to get weird and just go all in on a couple of these higher probability stacks and hope for the best. But anyway. Looks like some more lineups are starting to come in too. Dodgers more popular on FanDuel. Why is that today? Just better pricing? I haven't looked at FanDuel pricing. I haven't played there in a while, so I don't know. Also, it's also funny to see the Giants' second highest owned. Like I said yesterday, they have 1.5 good hitters right now. I guess I'm underselling Matt Chapman. So maybe 2.5 good hitters right now. But second highest owned stack on FanDuel, that would be a fade for me, even against that awful White Sox team. Sean, it depends on the sport and kind of what I'm doing right now. Since I'm just working in dev, and I haven't updated a couple things to make the Opto to Sim work properly. I'm just running sims. The bigger the contest, I think everybody kind of has their different way of building. Like if you have specific lineup heuristics you like to use, so maybe you're only a 5-2 player, or you only want to do 5-1-1-1 or something, then I would build a pretty good amount of lineups with that style in your Opto, and then use that to track. And also, like I showed in the stream I did a couple of days ago, showing how to use our stuff for small slates, showdowns, and small fields, that's where I would use the optimizer more, because then your heuristics are more likely to win, and it's easier to keep track of how well lineups perform over multiple sims. when you're using the optimizer, the way our results output. So anyway, here's our top 20 from that sim we ran. Let's go ahead and just expand this out to, actually, first, we have our player exposures here, and we actually fixed this today too, so we can filter down now to make, let's say, for example, we only wanted, this is a big slate, we don't want 85% of a single pitcher, even though Wheeler's kind of the chalk today. You can filter this down. Or like, let's say there's a certain hitter down here you want, Vlad Jr., you can get more of him. I know Vlad Jr. has been hot lately. Let's go out to 150. Just take a look at our player ownership for 150. So, I mean, Zach Wheeler, all over the top 150, 97%. That's pretty crazy. But in our projections, he's the highest projected pitcher. Good standard deviation. Braves can be tough, but no Acuna. They haven't been as good this year, obviously. You know, I can see it. I can see the vision. He's also cheaper than Cole Reagans, too, on DK, which matters. I mean, $200, it matters. And people want to go back to the Robbie Ray well after his last start against Atlanta. That was an epic implosion. Cost me a bunch. But anyway, so this run we get 97% Zach Wheeler with our top 150. So let's go ahead and look at Cole Reagans. So only 22%, right? So the Sims definitely favor Wheeler in this matchup. And, you know, you get the $200 price discount, like I said. So just in this one run, I mean, we're getting 97% Wheeler, 22% Reagans, and 25% Robbie Ray. So the Sims, just with default settings, just think it's better just to fade the Reagans ownership and just play Zach Wheeler. And this is just bad filtering by me on the field projection. Let me fix this. Okay. So, what about for hitters? You can zoom back out, look at our hitters. 45% Yainer Diaz. That seems aggressive on a big slate. What do I have projected for him? Let me go back into here, and we can look at it this way. So we're looking at Yainer. Where is he? Houston. Where's the Astros? There they are. So Yainer Diaz, we'll just sort of projection here, because he should be towards the top if he's that highly. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Okay. So only 7.65, but a decent standard deviation. Kind of interesting, he's so popular. Oh, he's a catcher. Okay. So that's a good thing we can look at here. So let's just look at catchers today. There we go. So I'm surprised here. Gary Sanchez only 2%, but I'm projecting him that well. And only 2% of lineups. That's very interesting. Even though he's higher projected than Yainer in my projections. That could just be a little bit of variance. I think if we rerun this, I mean, this is actually a good test. So let's go ahead and just kick off another moonshot here. And I'm just curious to see how much this Yainer Diaz, 45% and 45% of our top 150 on this first run. So let's just do another run and just see, maybe that's just a little bit of variance. I gave Houston 4% ownership and Milwaukee, you know, a full percent less for Milwaukee team stack ownership. So I wouldn't expect to see like that much Yainer, but we can try this. And we can also go ahead and download these lineups and just take a look and see how much Houston we have in our top 150. So we'll make a new spreadsheet. I really like this new player exposure thing you got. It makes it a lot easier to see what you're getting in your top lineups. 40% Josh Jung. So I guess now looking at this, right? 45% Yiner, 34% Jordan, 26% Jeremy Pena, 26% Altuve. So these are all Astros, right? So I feel like, yeah, I mean, I can already see here's a couple Houston 5 stacks, Houston 3 stack. So we see this ownership on Yiner, and basically what the Sims are saying is just looking at our top stacks data again. Just go get one of the teams that have high leverage and a high top stack probability on this slate. So let's go ahead and import our lineups here. So we're looking for our sim results. Turn this down a little bit, this music. I don't even know what this is. This is some like, they won't request to have your video taken down if you play this music, so that's why we have it on. So once this data gets imported, we can look at the stack ownership for the top 150. There we go. So again, we're gonna, same thing every time. We're gonna take our lineup stacks column, move it over to the right, just put it in a new column. Then we're gonna do a little data, split text to columns. And first we're gonna split on semicolon. Now with Excel, you can do this all at once, but with Google Sheets, you have to do it separately. So then once we do that once, then we go back, data, split text to columns, and this time we're going to split on the hyphen if this wants to cooperate. Oh, that's very annoying. Why is it doing that? Down here, custom. That is very annoying. I guess we'll insert some columns to the right to make more room on the screen. And then we're going to do that again. Data, text to columns. Now we can see it better. Okay. So splitting on the hyphen. Makes a bunch of crap columns. So we can just delete all these. I don't really care. I mean, we could look at, I mean, now, let's see. How much of a pain is this going to be? Nah, it's not worth it. Let's just look at our main stack ownership. So we'll just call this column primary stack. Insert pivot table. We're going to put a pivot table on a new sheet. And we're going to use a primary stack as our row. Going to count on lineup index. Actually, let's not do a pivot table yet. Let's not do that. So we're going to create a filter, sort on ROI, and I mean, all of these lineups should be generated stack, looks like it. So let's go ahead and grab our top 150. Now let's make a pivot table. Now that we've filtered down to a top 150. So again, primary stack is our row. We're going to count lineup index to get our count of how much we own each team, and already we can see how much Houston we have in the top 150. 27 out of 150. We can bring in our average ROI, average win percentage. These are pretty much the fields I look at every time I run a slate. And let's just sort descending on count of lineup index. So this is just our ownership. So that's why we're getting so much Yiner, so much Jordan, Pena, etc. 20% of our stacks, if we just ran this top 150, 27% of our stacks would be Houston stacks. And then we get we get Seattle, Toronto, Mets, Rangers, and Cubs. So looking at Seattle, negative leverage, but they popped in the Sims. Same with Toronto. What about the Mets? Kind of interesting. We don't get very much of these of the Boston and Dodgers. Let's see how much Dodgers 5 stacks. There's only 2 Dodgers 5 stacks if we just ran this today, and only 1 Boston 5 stack, just with this one set of 150. So this is the second run we did just a few minutes ago. I kind of want to see how much these percentages change. Now already, I mean, completely different. Zach Wheeler and Robbie Ray now, and Reagan's, all 3 of them popped. Makes me wonder if I did something. Oops. Makes me wonder if I did something with the settings on this last run, because this looks more what I would expect. We had 3 chalk pitchers who all projected well, and now instead of getting just only Zach Wheeler, we're getting a good mix of all 3. And in fact, we get a bunch of Robbie Ray, which sounds like fun after, like I said, his last game. And our hitting, even though we still are getting Houston to the top here. Who is Shea Whitcomb? I've never heard of that person in my life. We're still getting a lot of Houston here at the top, but the ownership looks better. So I feel like with this run, we did something weird. Maybe I filtered. I don't know. In any case, I like this run better. We're getting a lot more diversification. And this is what I would expect. When you have a slate this large and hitting is so random, it's better to just load up on the chalk pitchers. They're all in good spots. Reagan's against the Angels. Wheeler, tougher spot against Atlanta. I should say I haven't checked weather, so I don't know. I mean, Atlanta sometimes has the weird storms. And a lot of Robbie Ray at home against that putrid White Sox team. Even though he was terrible last game, maybe he'll be well rested this game. But this is what I expect. You just load up on the chalk pitching, and then just take shots at your hitting. So let's take a look at this set then. So let's go ahead and download this, and we're going to do the same thing. And take a minute to download. So I'm just going to filter this in Excel really quick. It's faster. So we'll go to just add these lineups in. So this results page is in our dev. So this is what we're going to be releasing next week. I'm just using this to show kind of, I like this because I can easily see the player exposures. This will be live like next week, later next week probably, and it's going to be part of our NFL launch. So let's go back to here. Eric Fetty in the top lineup. Could be fun. Let's make a pivot table with this data. Oh, actually, first we need to make our lineup stacks column. Where's our insert to the right? Insert column right. Paste this stuff in. Again, data, split text to columns, split, make it a semicolon. So that would get us our, I mean, we could even save this as a secondary stack, right? Because here's our 5-3, 5-2, etc. But I only really want to see the primaries right now. And let's make a couple more columns to give Google Sheets some room. And splitting then on hyphen will get us the 4-4 split up. So then this is primary stack. We'll just put it right here. So this one on the right is our second run we did. Again, we're gonna count our lineup index. We still get a lot of Houston, but it's a little more diverse. And then we're gonna look at ROI, average, win percentage, average, and projection average. So I guess this is a good example of why it's important to run multiple sims. I mean, sometimes I'll just do one, but like this is Houston in the first one we did. So it's not taking into account correlations like the sim does, the optimizer. I think best practice with the optimizer is create a bunch of lineups the way you with whatever heuristics you want to do. And then import those into the sim, and then use the sim to kind of filter your optimized lineups down to your 150. And I can show actually how to do that with our prod site if we want. But what I was saying is, like Houston here, in our first run, they're in 27 out of 150 of our top lineups. Their average ROI is $44, or 44%. And their average win probability was 2.7%, right? And then the second run we did, they're only in 21, their ROI dropped, and their win probability dropped. And I don't believe I changed any settings there. So that just shows you the kind of the randomness inherent in these simulations, especially for baseball, and why you're better off doing the process of using the optimizer, importing into the sim, and then running. But I like this mix a lot more. So we can sort here, take a look, on our counts. And this looks a lot better, right? Although we still don't, we get our Texas leverage here. We still don't get a lot of Boston or the Dodgers, which is very interesting. That's a good test. Let's just look at my projections really, well, that's window loads. Let's just look at ownership here on Boston. So it's not like there's a lot of ownership here, which I would have assumed that's why we aren't getting much of the Boston or the Dodgers as stacks. And Ohtani ownership, obviously, he's always going to have ownership. Let's just look at projection maybe. How do they So Boston projects well, even though they aren't showing up much in my sims. In the sim we just ran. But like the two Dodgers stacks that showed up had the highest average ROI, or second highest average ROI behind Mets 4 stacks. So this is another good case for let's use the optimizer to kind of run more lineups. And another thing we could do is we could go back into our sims and say, and let's see, what's the best way to do this? One way would be to drop ownership on the Dodgers to kind of force them, kind of increase their leverage in order to get more lineups. Another way we could do it is we can just go into the Dodgers and so now we have these. So we could just drop, we could increase Ohtani's projection. So we'll say this is 11 now. We'll increase Teo Oscars, Will Smith. We'll move all these guys up a little bit. Max Muncy, kind of weird he doesn't project well, but I feel like in my placeholder lineup for that I had for the Dodgers, he was just batting 8th. That's not. He's probably gonna be batting 5th. Would be my guess. It's just the way our little light up scraper works. I didn't play last night, Sean. So actually, we just got the Dodgers lineup. I can tell you where he's hitting. But let's go ahead and just rerun this. Now that I've adjusted the Dodgers, let's see if we can get a little more ownership on them. Just by increasing and then leaving field points the same. Because all we're doing here is just basically applying like a boost like we might have done with Fantasy Cruncher. We're just kind of boosting these guys up to try to get more of them into our top 150. And another thing, eventually, when we have this team exposure built, we'll be able to set our minimum, maximum stack exposures. And so looking at our runs here, this like, who was a negative leverage team? So the Mets were positive leverage. Seattle, Toronto, or actually Tex, Pitt. Let's see, Tex, positive leverage, Pitt, positive leverage. So really, I mean, this is why the Dodgers and the Red Sox don't show up, because they're both 4.5% owned, and we have like Houston at 4.2, Texas 3.8, Pitt 3.48. These lower owned stacks that I have, pretty similar to the Boston and the Dodgers, are popping more in the Sims. And so that's why we don't get much of the Red Sox and the Dodgers in the top 150. And so another way to do what I just did, instead of boosting the Dodgers projections, I could have just taken their ownership and just dropped them to like 3.5% to make them more equivalent to like Baltimore or Pittsburgh. And then I suspect that would also have boosted them into the top 150. But what I was getting at with the team exposures is it'll be similar to our player exposures here on the right, where we have this. Here's the current own in our 150 build right now. And then we could set like, let's say we wanted more. Here, just say that Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is the Dodgers. We had 9% Dodgers ownership, and we wanted more. We want to make it like 20%. Then we could just hit min exposure 20%, apply. Give it a minute. It'll refine our 150 build. And now you should be getting more Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. So in this case, it ended up bumping him up. There's probably like a little issue there. But that's the idea, is now we can set minimum exposures on players. We can go ahead and reset and get that back to where it was. So let's see now. Let's go back to 150 build. So this is the build we ran where we just boosted the Dodgers projections and left our ownership alone. And I'm still don't see them being boosted up here. And I feel like it is just an ownership issue with them. You know, all of these teams have roughly the same probability of being the top stack. And so it's just going to come down to the stack ownership. So once more, we can try one more thing here. Let's go back to stack settings, and now 4.5%. Let's just set them to 3.5%. And let's do the same thing with Boston. Where's Boston? Where's Boston? Yeah, I see your question. I'll answer it here in a second once I find the Red Sox. I can't find them. There they are. Okay, so we'll drop Boston down in ownership, and we'll just see. We probably have to pick up ownership on a couple teams. So we'll just make, we'll say Philly and Kansas City are both 6% now. I'm just making that up. But just to make our probability vector back to 100%, Kansas City and Philly get their ownership boosted. Okay, so the variance on the settings. So randomness here is like a quick way to adjust the standard deviation. So the way that, let me go ahead and make a new. Since most sites provide like a standard deviation, the problem with standard deviations for baseball hitters especially is that's not how hitters distributions actually look. They're not normal distributions, right? Um, you know, they're not that classic bell curve. They're more. If I had a picture of one, I could show you. I mean, actually, I could pull up my Sims and do it too. So with hitters, it's more of like a binomial distribution or a gamma distribution, and so what that means is like they peak at 0 or 1, like a very small number, and then have a long right tail. And so let me trying to think if I have an example of a picture that I can show. But in any case, so that's why we have a separate variance for pitchers and hitters. Is what we're doing with hitters is we take your input as standard deviation, and we're basically converting that when we create our samples for running the fantasy point simulations. We're converting these distributions for hitters to gamma distributions using our projections and standard deviations as input. So that's why we have these separated out. And randomness is basically just like one number. Let's say you wanted to reduce everybody's standard deviation at once. You would just change this to, let's say, if you set this to like 10, then everybody's standard deviation will become just 10% of what your input was. So like for Shohei, his standard deviation would then become like 0.786. For Teo Oscar, they're 0.4, or he'd be 0.77 standard deviation. So that's just like a very fast way. It's used more on the optimizer side, but it's a very fast way to just quickly adjust everybody's variance. I don't really use it very often. Like, I almost always leave this at 100. And then the default pitcher variance and default hitter variance, what these are doing is if you didn't provide a standard deviation at all, this number, 50%, gets multiplied by the projection. So Walker Buehler, if you had 50% pitcher variance, it would be, his standard deviation would then be 8.46. And for Shohei, since he's a hitter, 50% hitter variance, his standard deviation would then become 5.5. And that's just a way for people to use the sims if they don't have variance data. So if without, you can already kind of see how high these standard deviations are for my simulations for these hitters. It's almost 100% for them, right? Like the standard deviations are nearly as much as the projection, and even for like somebody like Miguel Rojas, who had an advantageous position in the lineup, his standard deviation is actually higher than his projection. And so usually, like if I didn't have any variance data for pitchers, I think 30 to 40% variance is a good number for them. And for hitters, I'd set it higher to like 70%. But that's only if you don't have your own standard deviation data, and I give you that in the projections that I provide in our Discord. Maybe tomorrow I can actually pull up, I'll have a little script that can pull up some of the hitter simulations to show kind of a better example of what I mean. But basically, TLDR, don't touch randomness and only use variance if you don't have any standard deviation data. So this run, we got a lot of Josh Jung. A lot of the Rangers. Remember, we messed with some of the team stack ownership. We still didn't get much Dodgers. Who are the Rangers playing today? Would be a good question. Pittsburgh. Who's pitching for Pittsburgh? I guess I can look here. Where is the... There we go. Mitch Keller pitching today. So you can see the differences just in like the raw 150s. Every time you change even a little thing, there's a lot of variance in baseball simulations. And so it's important to do multiple sims and not just run one and call it good. And you can, but it's, you know, you're kind of at the whims of whatever of randomness at that point. But actually, let's go to prod, and in production, I'll show how. So let me make. I'll run the FanDuel slate. I'll run the FanDuel slate with our production site so you guys can see how I use the optimizer. So let's go ahead and we're going to change the window that I'm looking at, and we're going to make sure we're on the right one. Nope. This is the one we want. I think FanDuel had a good small contest today. Or smaller contest today. Okay, so let's go ahead here, MLB, FanDuel. Yeah, the Deuces Wild. So we're going to send the Deuces Wild a few times. So we'll say Deuces Wild. Make sure nobody has questions in here. Give it a minute to kick up a job. Might be, there we go, okay. So we'll bring in my FanDuel projections. Got our ownership. I projected a lot of ownership on Zach Wheeler on FanDuel. Again, he's got best projection on the slate by a couple points. It's looking like he's worth it even at that ownership. But we're gonna just run. We can run. I don't know. I'm not sure why this is grayed out. Oh, that's what I get for being impatient. Back into our recent jobs, optimizer, configuring. Okay, let's go with, let's run 200 lineups, right? So that's, the Deuces Wild was 1,000 lineups, so this is about 20% of the field. So let's just go ahead and just do 4-mans. I don't, especially in a smaller contest, I don't really want to mess around with, I don't really want to mess around. And we can lower the salary because we're already kind of using an optimizer, so This might take a minute. Okay, so we got some more lineups in. I'm gonna kick off our projection job again. Probably hang on for about 10 more minutes, and then I'll update projections for everybody. Yeah, we're only missing two now: the A's and the Rays, or the Rays and the Mariners. It looks like Muncie hitting 7. So hey. So my projections are. So they're a Monte Carlo simulation of each game. So I take the projected or the actual lineups and the pitchers. I have a bunch of how many features is it? I basically have a model that outputs the probability of outcomes of each at bat. And so, like for example, this Jose Quintana against Austin Slater, I can actually pull up the vector probabilities. But what it's doing is it's iterating, it's going through each game according to the rules of baseball. So 3 outs, 9 innings, and then extra innings if needed. And the model is just projecting what is based on the game state and the stats. And I have a bunch of features that are feeding into the stats. But based on all that, what is the probability of outcomes for that at bat? So it's like there's a 20% chance of Slater hitting a single, 10% chance of him hitting a double, 20% chance of him striking out, and so on. I think there's like 19 different outcomes that are possible. Let me see if I can pull up an example one because it's kind of fun to look at. But then basically it's just going through each game, simulates each game 50,000 times. And then I have a little database that's set up. That's basically the box score. And then from that, then I've just averaged all those projections, those box scores out, and then that's how the projection's generated. And then I use other sites to kind of, I use kind of like an industry aggregate, you'd call it, against my projection to kind of regress my projections back towards what the industry's thinking. Let's see. But it's a pretty cool model, in my opinion. So let's look at, I don't know what the game this even is, but I'll kind of share it and show what it looks like. So here's an example at bat from, make sure these aren't crazy numbers first. So this is an example at bat from Rockies Nationals. Is for, let me get this on the screen. So we have this little notepad thing here. So Charlie Blackmon against DJ Hurts. This is the very first at bat of the game. So it shows here 0-0 first inning. There's no outs during this at bat. This is just updating with the game state. So it's saying here's the first out, who's on base, and then here's all the probabilities for the leadoff at bat for Charlie Blackmon today. These are the probabilities that I have. So there's a 65% chance he's going to get hit and get out, so like a pop fly or ground ball or whatever out. A 3% chance he'll hit a home run in the first at bat. 20% chance he hits a single, 0.03% chance he hits a triple, and so on. And so these numbers, like for the first, and also the other thing too is it takes into account the pitch count for the pitcher. There's a different model that handles how many pitches are expected to be thrown. So these numbers can change just however the game state changes. So like let's say DJ Hurts is at pitch 120, these probabilities would be way different. And let's say the Rockies have runners, bases loaded, and no outs, these probabilities will be different, and so on. But that's the idea: is you simulate each at bat in every game 50,000 times, and then you get box scores from each game simulation. Average those out, and there's your hitter and pitcher projections. But we can go back. Let me get rid of that. I want to go back and this optimizer is still working. We're almost there. Let me kick off those projections again, actually, before I forget. Okay. And the NFL projections will be similar to what the baseball does. It's going to be kind of the same thing, play by play. What's the probability of outcomes for each play? Is the play going to be based on the coaches and the game situation and the team stats? Is the play going to be a run or a pass? If the play's a run, who's running the ball? Based on who's running the ball, how many yards are expected to be gained? Similar for passing. If it's a pass, who's to the targeted receiver? What's the outcome of the pass? Like a sack, completion, interception, and then how many yards are expected to be gained based on the play. And then we'll simulate it through each game that way. And that's almost ready for prime time. It'll be up for the season. We'll be sharing those. And also, those will be included on the draft group page, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to worry about bringing those in if you use our projections. So here's our optimized lineups. Looking like we got some more Boston and Dodgers in here. So let's just go ahead, create an optimized sim. Each game takes about 2 minutes to run, and then it's just distributed, so each game is run like on a separate instance. So all in all, it takes about 10 minutes for each game to get simmed. Yeah, NFL Faster is good. Where's my, what was it? Oh, Deuce is Wild. That's what we're going to do. Is it sharing the right screen? Yes. NFL Faster is good. The only thing that sucks is there's NFL Data Pi, which does a decent job, but I'm a Python person first. I don't really love R, and it's kind of annoying having to do a lot of that stuff in R. Usually, what I've been doing is just ETL, just creating all the data I need in R, and then creating the models in Python. So we're bringing in our projections again for FanDuel. Now, this is a smaller contest and it's a higher dollar. So these ownerships are probably wrong. I would expect more on Reagan's, more on Wheeler. But that's okay. So now here's our 200 lineups. Bringing in. And this seems fine. We can lower this a little bit just because it's a smaller contest. So we just reduced our max off optimal. Our team stacks. We don't have the. Let's just make this like this, and I'm gonna use my top stack ownership. Kind of annoying. So we'll just say 6. Philly 5. Type these in real quick. The tough thing about NFL this year, I should say, is modeling kickoffs is going to be really hard at the start of the year because of the new kickoff rules. I don't really have a good answer for how I'm going to do it, and I feel like scoring in general is going to be underprojected because people don't know how to account for the new kickoffs. Now, I actually haven't seen the data on preseason of how much different the yardage is on these returns, but I think the last few years, the touchbacks, since they changed the touchbacks rules, I think touchbacks were happening in an obscene amount, and now they aren't going to happen as much, I feel like. And so I think in general, in both betting and in DFS, I think scoring is going to be underprojected because I feel like teams are going to have either better field position or score more off of special teams. And so that's something I think people should be mindful of when they're looking at projections to start the year. Now, I don't know like how other sites are accounting for that, but I think it's worth noting. Dodgers 6 and Detroit 3. All right, let's run this. So here our job is running. Looks like the Rays are being... I think that Rays game is the only one that's not running correctly. Everything else looks good. I think the problem with that Rays game is the lineup the source that I use for lineups has Ben Rortfeld in, and he's on the paternity list, and so it's causing issues. Let's go ahead and actually, so again, I showed this the other day. At NBA, I don't think so. It's way harder, way more manual. I think more likely we would hopefully partner with somebody to use their projections, or just hire somebody to do it, because I don't want to. NBA is such a pain because you got to keep updating it all night. And for like a true play-by-play NBA sim, so much is dependent on rotations. It's doable, but I don't think we'll have it this year. So I've shown how I do this before. We'll just go right to sheets. Give it a minute. We'll grab all of our, once our Google Sheets loads. So here's our 200 optimizer lineups we built. I'm just gonna ignore own product. I think we're gonna change own product to geomean. Makes more sense. So let's pull up that sim we just ran, the Deuces Wild sim. So I've shown this before, but the nice thing about our sim results is when you import optimizer results, they're in the same order that you input them. So you can literally just copy and paste. We want to copy these 5. And we're going to bring these guys, these columns in, all 200 lineups. I'm not showing that, but it's you can literally just copy and paste from the sim results, just straight down. All your opto lineups are in the same order. So it's super easy. And then let's go ahead and we can just clone this job. Give it a second. We can label this. I usually just do pre-lock for now. I don't have it completely automated yet. And it's like and so late in the year, it's not really worth it. Especially with like NFL being the main focus. So usually I'll update them like 30 minutes before. We're getting close to the slate, so I'm going to have an update here in a second once I get off stream. But I just wanted to show again how I do these for these smaller contests. So I've just accrued all these sim results from our first run, and we're going to kick off another job. Yeah, I mean, you can get, it's pretty easy to get from GeoMean to own product. So, and back and forth. And GeoMean is just easier to read and a little easier to understand. So I think this just seems like a change we should make before we push this new site up. So again, it's going to load all 200 lineups. Yes. I am planning on having projections for afternoon slates. And also, I don't know if we'll have it at the start of the year, but we should have late swap for Sims, similar to how we were doing late swap for basketball. So like last year, we had the live leaderboards that showed kind of everybody's equity in NFL contests. So you could see let me fix my camera. You could see everybody's equity for lineups like in the Millie Maker or whatever. And so the code is pretty easy to adapt to late swap. And so we're probably going to have something for late swap, like we did for NBA, where we made 5 separate possible swaps for your lineups and then showed you the equity of each. Planning on having that for Sims for NFL. All right, so here's our second run. And again, I'm not showing you what I'm doing in Excel, but I'm just scrolling down and copying and pasting the columns, the win percentage, ROI, just like this. And we'll just, so that way we know. And oops, there we go. And then we're just going to aggregate these. So equals average of this. So we're going to bring these over. Bring these down. I think I screwed up on copying a row. Oh, I just copied an extra row. Okay. So just looking at which lineups over 2 sims, probably for smaller contests I'd do more than 2, like 3 or 4, maybe even 5. But let's just see on average. So our average, these lineups on average were our highest ROI. So we can just look at them. So it was a Seattle 4, a Houston 4, Cincy 4, Houston 4, and it looks like we didn't even get, it looks like we were fading. So it's kind of funny how it works, where with the large fields, our sims were, I guess this is also on FanDuel, so I should caveat there, but on large field, we were getting a lot of Wheeler, Reagans, and Ray, just loading up on the chalk. But looking at the small field, sims want us to actually go away from that and go down to the other pitchers and just play stacks that we like with those pitchers. And so you're getting differentiation there. Seattle 4, Milwaukee 2. I don't know if I'd actually play a 32-3. Well, maybe I would on FanDuel. And no Walker Buehler. Walker Buehler not a favorite of the Sims today. So just showing, these lineups sim the best over our 2 rounds of the Deuces Wild. So this is not the FanDuel flagship. This is a smaller contest, only 1,000 lineups. But just showing how I do this for smaller field stuff. Just run multiple sims, take advantage of the way that our sim results output, and just aggregate up your results, and you get a good idea of which of your optimized lineups sim the best. And because they're optimized, I know that they're builds that I probably would want to play. They're all four stacks. Looks like they're all 4 2s that sim the best, so you get I wonder if you get like Otani or somebody in here. Who's the one-off? Oh, Marte is the one-off. But yeah, so I'm going to sign off, make projections. Good luck today, everybody. Vlad Jr. is the one-off in this one. That makes sense to me. Yeah, they did. They've not been very good. But they did have that huge game on Sunday Night Baseball. The one slate that nobody could play them, they scored like 15 runs against the Mets. So that's how it goes. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll push up in a projections update here in about 5 or 10 minutes. And good luck tonight.